important also for the APrIGF. This is a proposal that didn't initially come from the Secretariat, but was really suggested by the NRIs, including the APrIGF.
Thank you, Anja. Well, my name is Jennifer Chung. I think you might have seen me running around these few days. I am part of the APrIGF Secretariat team, and we are really honored to have this session here because it is important to us. For us, this main theme for this year is people at the center. And I think for our region in particular, we are very concerned and we are very willing to talk about all these different internet governance issues and policies that affect our lives. We are a region full of diversity. We are a region that encapsulates more than half of the world's population. We are also the region that has a lot of innovation and creativity. So we are very interested in how the IGF is going, especially with all these things that are happening next year, the Global Digital Compact, how the IGF will be innovating, adapting, and forming. And this is very much a session that was requested by our entire community. In fact, we've had over 536 unique participants in the actual venue and way more online as well. And I see more NRIs of the region joining us. And we've also had in the past few days, the youth dialogue from the region, which is the very first youth leaders dialogue we've ever had. So there's a lot of interest in this region on this topic. And we are really honored to have all these distinguished guests and all of you. It's not just a panel for guests to speak at you. It is a dialogue where we will be talking about the future together. So with that, I'd like to hand it back to my co-moderator, Anja, to start the session.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jennifer. And I said at the beginning, we're in a very good company, including all of you present here. Let me just briefly say who's with us and who's going to help us to set the stage and trigger, hopefully, a vibrant dialogue with all of you. So maybe I'll start from who is in this room and then we'll move online. So we have a great pleasure on my left side to have His Excellency Minister Timothy Massayo, Minister for Communication and Information Technology of Papua New Guinea. Thank you very much for joining us. Going forward, we're very happy to have Ms. Anju Mangal, Chair of the APrIGF Multi-Stakeholder Steering Group. I know you have many hats, but I'm saying the role that we would like you to speak from in this session. Next to Anju is Mr. Samiran Gupta, Policy Head from Twitter India and Senior Director. Thank you for joining. And online with us, we have Ms. Ellen Strickland, Chief Advisor of Internet NZ, New Zealand. We also have Mr. Zhuang Zhu, Director of the Division for Public Institutions and Digital Government of the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, which is the institutional home within the United Nations of the IGF Secretariat. And we are very fortunate to have Mr. Vince Cerf joining us. Again, many roles Mr. Cerf has, known as the father of the internet, but we would like to hear from Mr. Cerf in his capacity of the leadership panel of the IGF as an output that came out from the roadmap for digital cooperation of the Secretary General. So if you agree, Jennifer, maybe we can go straight into what's the focus of this session. We mentioned at the beginning the role of the United Nations as basically people-centered intergovernmental international institutions. And I'm very glad that we have with us Zhuang, the director of the APIDG from UNDESA, calling live from New York. Zhuang, maybe I will ask you to help us set the stage at the beginning. The United Nations has been putting efforts to keep pace with rapid, really technological development and to navigate ways it can help, the technologies can help its work. Can I ask you just to tell us quickly, where are we today in terms of the United Nations position with the IGF almost 2 decades after its initial convening?
Thank you, Anja, and also thank you, Jennifer, for giving me the opportunity to speak at the workshop. The United Nations family, actually including the UN Secretary General himself, has accorded top priority to this importance of the Internet Governance Forum, actually at all levels, not just the global IGF, but also the regional and national IGFs. This is the place actually where public digital policy issues are discussed among all stakeholders as equals, supporting decision makers to make informed decisions. Indeed, we have come a long way, as Anja, you mentioned earlier, since WSIS negotiations in the early 2000s and the convening of the first meeting of the IGF by the then Secretary General Kofi Annan in 2006. The IGF has actually been evolving since its beginning, keeping pace with the rapidly changing digital landscape. From early on, a handful of enthusiasts who recognized the need for the internet to be governed through a multi-stakeholder model. Now, 17 years after, it has reached thousands and thousands more people, and they are actively participating in the IGF process, including through its annual meetings, the MAG meetings, the different streams of intersessional work, and the extensive work of the national, regional, and youth IGFs, as we are witnessing today. At the same time, the UN has also embraced digital transformation that has underpinned the growth of the internet. The UN family actively promotes digital technologies as they are now a proven accelerator of sustainable development. And as such, it has becoming a vital tool for the UN to use and apply in order to achieve the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, now more popularly known simply as SDGs. Now, our department, the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, also known to many simply as UNDESA, has been entrusted by the Secretary General within the Secretariat and also by the General Assembly within the intergovernmental process with the mandate of coordinating Secretariat-wide support for digital transformation, for internet governance, and also for the implementation of the 2030 Agenda since its adoption in 2015. UNDESA, to start with, I need to emphasize, has profound respect towards the multi-stakeholder nature of the IGF and the importance of NRIs. We fully recognize the value of the regional IGFs as the meeting point and the capacity development platform for communities from the region to get together, exchange inputs, and connect with each other, as well as with other parts of the world. And indeed, the Asia-Pacific Regional IGF is actually doing this job and performing this function extremely well. And we thank the APrIGF for hosting the IGF process for the region and for creating this opportunity for us today. Let me also use this occasion to stress that the Secretary General's vision and commitment to support and strengthen the IGF is very clear, as recognized in his roadmap for digital cooperation and recently issued the report on our common agenda, in which he proposed the Global Digital Compact, and how to strengthen the IGF and how to strengthen the contributions of the regional and national IGF has been a subject of countless conversation from his office to various UN entities, including our department. So today, we want to invite the stakeholders to continue this good work in approaching now almost 20 years later, the WSIS +20 review process, when the General Assembly in 2025 will look at again what has been done in implementing the provisions of the paragraph 72 of the Tunis Agenda for the Information Society and decide on the future of the IGF. And we would like to hear from you and to have your inputs. And our department, UNDESA, will be servicing as the Secretariat to support the preparations of the 2025 review process, including allow me to say once again that our department, UNDESA, stands for a strong people-centered IGF based on the multi-stakeholder process, and that the forum's future is shaped here now by participants like you. And the Asia-Pacific Regional IGF is a good start to have others inspired to follow the good action models. So I'll stop here. Thank you, Anja. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Zhuang. You mentioned a number of processes, a number of documents. For newcomers, this can certainly be very overwhelming. And I'm glad that in the next couple of minutes, we definitely will be discussing this as well, especially because there are people in this room and also online who were directly involved also in shaping the business processes for over the couple of years. But before we start engaging with all of you here, many complex processes exist on an international and intergovernmental sphere in our multi-stakeholder ecosystem. And digital technologies are changing every day. We are witnessing new emerging tech coming up and new policy issues or challenges or opportunities associated with those technologies. We like to go back a little bit in the history just to see where we started. It's good to reflect from the present moment, whether there is something we should be grateful for, or it is something where maybe we didn't use the opportunity. And who better to ask than a person who definitely shaped and created the history and really contributed to setting up the conditions for the internet we enjoy today. Vint, thank you very much again for joining us. I know for both you and Zhuang, it's a very late hour there in US. But I'm going to ask you, Vint, to bring us back a little bit in the history, maybe during the time when you were creating these important pieces of technology 4 to 5 decades ago, speaking from today. For example, in the time when you were writing the first TCP protocol, co-designing the TCP/IP protocol, helped develop the first commercial email system. How do you see today from that perspective, from that young Vint that was creating these technologies? Was your vision at that time in terms of what the internet could become something that is a reality today? Was it more about technologies at that time than about politics than it is today?
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Anja, for inviting me to join you. I wish I could be there in Singapore. It's one of my favorite places in the world, but unfortunately my calendar is not cooperating. I also want to thank Mr. Zhu for a very thoughtful intervention, and one which I support. I'm particularly enthusiastic about the Secretary General. Being an engineer, he really understands in some visceral way the wonderful power and also peril of this great internet that we have been building and evolving over the past literally 50 years. I can tell you that in the early days, this was largely an engineering challenge. We were trying to make it work. And the evolving applications which have emerged over those 5 decades, in some respects, were anticipated. And in fact, you'll see articles coming from the Internet Society that speak to internet being for everyone, which I still believe is true. It isn't yet, not everyone has access, but that was certainly our goal, is to make it accessible and affordable and usable by everyone who wished to take advantage of it. But what we have learned over the course of those decades is that this very powerful and largely neutral platform is an empowering element which empowers everyone, including people who do not necessarily have your best interests at heart. And this is a painful recollection, or I say a realization, a painful realization, that when we introduce tools of this power and scope and ability to amplify, that they amplify all things, so that the information society, which was envisioned in the WSIS discussions, has also become the misinformation society. And this is why we're having so many conversations now about how to turn the internet into a safer and more reliable place than it has become. if you'll forgive me, I would like to leap over those 5 decades to the present and speak to what comes to my mind right now and what I hope will be subject of conversation during this particular regional IGF. The first 2 words that come to my mind are accountability and agency. And these apply very broadly to individuals, to organizations, and to countries. Everyone needs to be held accountable for what they do on the internet, how they use it, and what they do with it. And I believe that everyone, individuals and organizations, companies and countries, need to have agency in order to protect themselves in what has become a potentially hazardous environment. In order to achieve accountability, I think we must give up on the notion of absolute anonymity, something which has been debated over time. But ultimately, if we cannot identify parties, then we can't hold them accountable. To use a simple analogy, license plates just look like random numbers and letters, but there are people who have the ability to penetrate that veil of privacy and ask, to whom does the car belong? That doesn't necessarily tell you who was driving it at the time, but it does reveal something about the ownership of the automobile. And in a sense, I think our pseudonymity in the internet needs to be penetrable by parties with appropriate authority. I think most especially, we are seeing the beginnings of the framework in which this system needs to be placed to increase its safety and privacy, as well as security. And so you hear things like right to be forgotten, which is the removal of information which is personal in nature and potentially harmful. Or you hear about technologies like two-factor authentication in order to make it harder for someone to guess or otherwise crack passwords and usernames to get into accounts without authorization. You're seeing efforts to regulate bad behaviors on the internet, and they are driven in part by a desire to protect citizens and organizations and countries from harm. What's important about the IGFs, both the regional and national IGFs, and of course the global one, is that these events, these meetings and processes provide extraordinarily broad perspective. We need to see the internet from everyone's point of view in order to understand how it's operating and how it is perhaps not functioning in the way that we would like. We need the experiences that each of you bring to this discussion. I have come to believe almost jokingly that maybe we need to consider having an internet driver's license. You know that when teenagers are old enough to drive, we don't give them the keys to the car, at least not here in the US, until they've taken classes to learn how to be safe on the road, how to assume that the other drivers may not be the best, safest drivers in the world, and you need to drive defensively. We need to teach people that before we give them the authority and responsibility to operate an automobile. And while I don't really think we have to issue licenses to use the internet, I think the same concept makes a lot of sense. Teach people how to be safe in an online environment. The high-level panel, which recently has been announced, is a way of reinforcing the insights that the IGFs produce. At least that's how I see my role on the panel, is to focus and reinforce the insights derived from those discussions that take place both in the regional meetings and over the course of the year. I see this as part and parcel of a fundamental initiative, which is digital inclusion. We want to make the internet inclusive in every possible way. We want it to be affordable. We want it to be sustainable. We want it to be safe. We want it to be secure. We want it to be accessible, and I mean by this accessible to people with disabilities. This is an area in the digital space which has not been well served. It is not easy to make these systems easily accessible to people who need some kind of accommodation. And so we need deeper and deeper insights into how to make software and online services more accessible to everyone. The system has to be reliable because people are relying on it to work every single day. When your mobile doesn't work, all kinds of side effects, not all of them good, can happen. Cascade kinds of failures because this didn't happen and that didn't happen and the next thing didn't happen. And we need to be assured that the internet as it is presented to us is fit for purpose, has the capacities and the parametric performance that we need. Our big challenge, I think, as a whole, is to figure out how we can retain the value of the internet, which has been demonstrated strongly, certainly in the course of the last 2 decades, if not more, while we defend against its abuses. And that, I think, ladies and gentlemen, is the conundrum of this decade, and one which I am glad to know that you are all attentive to and working on. And with that, I will stop and thank you again for the opportunity to intervene.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vint, for being here and for your valuable inputs, which we'll definitely reflect on in the coming minutes. Both Zhuang and Vint, I know it's very late in New York, so you're most welcome, and in the US, I know you're most welcome to stay with us, but given the hour, you're also most welcome to disconnect. I'm sure we will all understand. In any case, if you stay with us, please be free to come in wherever you want. This is really an open dialogue, and we will very soon, when we hear from all our speakers, open the floor to everyone, including our panelists, to intervene whenever one feels to intervene. Maybe now back to the room, Jennifer, if you agree to continue with the discussion.
Thank you, Anja. Thank you, Vince, and thank you, Zhuang, for your very considered interventions, very valuable for all of us to think about. Anju, we are now in our home region. So almost 20 years after the original WSIS and convening of the IGF, what is your view? What are the good things we've done, and have we missed something somewhere?
Thanks, Jennifer. I think we've done really good things, but there's a few things we've missed. I do want to say something. When we talk about the UN high-level digital cooperation and global digital impact, not many people understand how that actually applies to their work, or I'm sure here you probably don't understand how it aligns to some of the projects or activities that you do back in the countries. And I think that there is a big disconnect with the global level, at the regional and also national level. And how do we bring all of that together is difficult, but it's up to you. It's up to you to understand how you can actually be aligned to the work that's happening at the UN level, also at the global IGF level, but also how your work actually aligns to regional, and what are the discussions that you can take back to your countries in terms of, you know, the challenges, the opportunities, issues, etc., in relation to internet governance. I just want to make a point in terms of, you know, when we talk about the internet, right? I am a firm believer the internet should be open, secure, and safe for all, but it should still be a multi-stakeholder process. I'm not a fan of multilateral, unfortunately. So I always believe that it should be a bottom-up approach. It should be about the communities leading discussions at the national level and prioritizing their projects activities according to the country priorities, which is the national perspective plans, national strategies, national policies. It is very important. And I just want to say that we need around $428 billion USD to connect the unconnected and to connect humanity by 2030. Can you believe how much money we need? And it's, you know, how much money that is needed for which region? Mostly it's Southeast Asia, South Asia, Pacific, Central Asia, and Africa. A lot of it is needed for the global South. Now, how do we connect the unconnected by 2030? How do we reach that goal by 2030? You have to tell us. Only you will know how to make that happen. And it's not just about infrastructure. It is about digital skills, content. It's also about mobile infrastructure. It's about CAPEX. And there's a lot of things in relation to how do we make it meaningful connectivity, how do we address meaningful connectivity? How do we address meaningful access? Making sure that how we include the communities, marginalized communities, like the persons with disability, youth, women in disability, the rural and remote communities. You may have heard that there was an earthquake in Papua New Guinea. It was really sad to see that, you know, there was a lot of disruption. And then at that point, it's not just about infrastructure, but it's also about bringing in the key sectors. How do we drive those, you know, the quick disaster risk resilience, and how do we make sure that these quick solutions are available to the different sectors? And again, I just want to say is that it's not easy. Tonga went offline for like a month. The submarine cable was completely cut off. People were without the internet, but there were quick solutions given by, you know, people who were actually on the ground trying to make sure that they were connected again. And again, this is about community. Why else is the internet built? I understand from what Vincent said, and I really appreciate what he's done for us, but it was built for the good cause, and now it's up to you. And I think it's important that we need to figure out a unified model. Again, I would really emphasize on a multi-stakeholder model when we talk about UN digital cooperation, digital compact, but also how does that align to the work that you're doing in your countries? I'm going to just leave it at that for now. There's lots of good things and bad things, but I would love to hear from what the countries and what the individuals have to say about that.
Thank you, Anju. I think we can all agree that for internet governance and all the digital matters, multi-stakeholder bottom-up dialogue is absolutely needed. And of course, once again, from the APrIGF community, our hearts go out to the peoples of Papua New Guinea, and we're very honored to have His Excellency here and his team as well. I'm actually going to segue to our guest right next to us here. Twitter has been, you know, on the news a little bit, and from pop stars to past presidents to past prime ministers to a lot of people in this region, since, you know, using the internet for the Asia Pacific region, a lot of people do access via mobile. Social media has evolved to be so much more than a mere connector between people. So with this growing role, policy, applicable governance and regulation has been changing as well. How do you see today's social media landscape, and what is the value you see in the IGF process and its key principles? Samaran, your thoughts.
Thank you, Jennifer, and thank you, Anja, for inviting me to join this esteemed panel. Vint is listening. I always take notes when he speaks, so I've got my notes for this morning. Thank you for your question. So let me, and I'm going to speak from my experience, my very short experience at Twitter. I've barely been there for about 6-7 months now. One of the things that I see at Twitter is that social media, because of its ease of use and availability, is also used by governments. Okay, that's the way they connect with people. Okay. And you know, just as an example, before the monsoon season starts in India, we at Twitter actually do we conduct training for the national you know, disaster management force in India to you know, guide them on how best to use it, because it is that tool they're going to use, how to use Twitter, because it's that tool they're going to use when a disaster is going to strike. Okay. Now, we, in the social media space, we also see a lot of regulations, a diverse range of regulations which are coming up. And it's, in a sense, it's unprecedented, but perhaps expected, just given the number of people who are now online, you know. And, you know, speaking on behalf of Twitter, I could say that we are open to forward-looking regulation that actually keeps the internet open, it keeps the internet unified, interoperable, and available to users, and give them the choice, to be able to use different services online. Where does IGF come into all of this? I think it's important that the conversations that take place internationally, regionally, and nationally within the IGF structure, eventually we need to see more of that being actioned into policy. And obviously it's not all going to come looking exactly the same in every country, because each country will have their own, versions of it. But if we were to do that, if we were able to achieve that globally, I think we would be in a better space. We would be more coordinated, and hopefully the internet would be a safer space in the future. So let me stop here.
Thank you, Samiran. Absolutely. I mean, Twitter, even being here on stage, talking to us, talking with us at APrIGF really shows that they value this conversation we're having here. If you would allow me, Anja, if we can just segue back over to the Pacific.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Jennifer. Thank you for also Samiran and Andrew for these wonderful inputs so far. Very complex, and I think there's a lot of material to comment on. Andrew mentioned both also Vint and Joang as well about the notion of inclusion, of having everyone on board in the online ecosystem. And unfortunately, that's not our reality yet. And the numbers in terms of the digital divide are still alarming. After so many years of working for one internet for all equally. And that, of course, brings me to a very specific region, which is the Pacific region, and especially to island states, regardless if they're developed or developing, that geographical location makes them very specific and challenging for a deployment of infrastructure. I'm very happy that Excellency Minister Masayo is with me on my left, and I wanted to ask you, from the perspective of your country, of your part of the world, of the region, what actions do we need to take to ensure that all communities benefit from these global processes and from the present digital technologies?
Thank you very much, Anja, and a very good morning to all of you, and to our esteemed panelists who are tuned in from other countries. And of course, Samiran, acknowledge you. Thank you, of course, Andrew and Jennifer. Of course, I want to also take this time to thank the IGF and other event sponsors, including PNIC, for hosting and also according us due recognition here as the ministerial delegation from Papua New Guinea. And I also want to say that the Minister for Internal Government, Internal Security in the Papua New Guinea government is in the room right now. And I want to acknowledge his presence among us. We are a member of ITU and other UN bodies, and as Minister, I am very, very happy to be here today. I acknowledge other panelists and the wonderful contributions to the internet. A special mention to Mr. Vince Seft, the father of modern internet. Greetings to you from our country of Papua New Guinea, and hope that you can visit us one day. Back to your question, there is obviously need to govern how internet decision making is made. Scarce internet resources are allocated, skills to improve connectivity, and how technology improves the lives of people in different countries around the world. In my country of Papua New Guinea, internet really came in a big way before the year 2000. And then went mobile through the entry of mobile phone operation digital. Although there is, we have been incumbent state-owned operator, other satellite-based operators, citizens can can now contribute to the digital economy in a big way through e-commerce and other forms of engagement. Governance is therefore important so that smaller Pacific islands and those like Papua New Guinea can benefit in this global ecosystem. Having spoken more to our Pacific community stakeholders through our chapter of Internet Society or ESOP, our challenge has been the backing of resource and of course working on a sustainable model for our IGF. I believe Pacific Island nations such as Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, Vanuatu, Tonga, Fiji, Samoa, and others should be given greater voice and support in their own IGF to grow and build up organically. And so as the minister responsible for ICT in Papua New Guinea, I am determined to grow my own IGF locally and that of the Pacific also. I intend, thank you very much. I intend to seek support from other Pacific Islands, ICT ministers, and grow our capacity, improve our decision-making so we can prepare for the 17th IGF in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, with its theme of resilient internet for a shared, sustainable, and common future. So the internet is here to stay, and there is no way we can say goodbye to internet. It is now a part of our lives, and that is the fact of the matter. And so we will continuously grow. This is a learning experience for us, and we are hearing and seeing a lot of new things that, as I mentioned on Monday in my talk, Papua New Guinea, I think, is the last frontier because we have just embraced digital transformation and we are progressing into that space right now. So it is responsibly investing in our economies that we all build each other up in the ecosystem for a shared sustainable future. So there is trade, exchange of ideas, culture, and contributions to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals that we have in front of us. So we are pretty much in this, and I think coming here and attending this, and of course speaking in our panels, it gives me a great awareness, and of course it gives us a lot of information that we'll be relying on in progressing forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Minister Masayo. Indeed, well-deserved applause. We need more decision makers bringing their teams to our ecosystems where we as decision shapers can help them to make informed, wise decisions to achieve the set objectives. Before we open the floor, you can start preparing your hands, both online and here in the room. Let's wrap up this first segment by inviting Ellen to join us if I think she is online, yes, with us. Ellen, maybe you can help us to wrap up all these very valuable inputs that we heard into a conclusion in terms of what do we do now to prepare for 2025 and the upcoming Vistas Plus 20 processes? What would be the right message to send to 2025 from this very moment now here?
Kia koto. Hi, and thank you, Anja. That's a large ask to wrap up some fantastic contributions and a lot that's on our plate. But I think for me, the history of, I was first involved with internet governance and the WSIS process myself as a baby policy person working for the National Commission for UNESCO here in New Zealand, having community consultations amongst people, technical people, librarians, people interested in this idea of the information society and the internet and what it might be. And I think it's really important that we reflect on the change, the different worlds we're in now, and the way that the internet is a part of all our lives now. Those benefits, but also, you know, the harms and abuses that we see the internet interwoven through all aspects of our lives. But that also you see people talking about the internet, and particularly these challenges at dinner parties, and in ways that 20 years ago, it was just, you know, archivists and techies talking in the basement of the National Library about these issues. It's now a dinner table conversation. And I think that that speaks to the importance of the internet, but it also points us to, you know, the need for dialogue on this, and that we need to ensure that, you know, the messages for WSIS, but I would extend that more broadly to, you know, the discussions we have here, the IGF, looking at the digital compact process, need to be, and I'm certainly that I'm speaking to, you know, people who will be supportive of this, need to be multi-stakeholder. They need to be bottom up. But that we're in an environment now where many of the things we need to talk about are more understood by more people, in terms of how it impacts them, how it could impact them and their societies. That we need to have those discussions about the roles of the respective stakeholders. We talk about that a lot now, but really from a community level upwards, that we, you know, have those dinner party conversations, but that at a national level, at a regional level, like this IGF, through to international, you know, spaces, we engage in important conversations about the value of the internet, you know, to pick up you know, a thread through the other speakers here, that you know, the need for everyone to have that opportunity to be connected, to have those values. We need to protect and defend it, but also while acknowledging that we need to address and manage a range of challenges and abuses that we see of this very powerful thing. So I think, you know, in summary, I think what's important is spaces like this, but all the spaces really where we come together at these different levels, and reflect on the internet, on internet governance, on what's working and what isn't. Because what I see is, and I think many would agree, is a proliferation of spaces and forums as people, different groups recognize the challenges and the opportunities of the internet and their role as individuals, as organizations, as countries, and want to engage in it. So I think, you know, that proliferation we've seen and the many spaces shows the interest, but how do we bring together those discussions to really unpick the principles that we all want going forward for the internet, and then the forums and the processes that we need to support that. It's a huge task in front of us, but I think that, you know, a key message is about the importance of internet governance. I think often working in this space, many of those people understand bits, you know, you looking at the bits of the elephant, so to speak, you know, the toe, the trunk, but to pull out and understand a little bit about the importance of internet governance as a whole, but that we keep people at the heart as we look to the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ellen. I think what you mentioned just now, how to bring conversations together right now, in this instance, this is one of the conversations that we're having right now. So I think we're already, you know, taking the very first step in doing what we want to do, going towards 2025. Now I would like to thank first Vint, who has stayed with us his very late hours. So thank you, Vint, for joining us in this very important session. And I'd like to open the floor to, I can already see a very long list there. And I also note that we do have some questions from remote participants as well. If you will allow me, let's go first to the floor. Joyce, please. And reminder to state your name and affiliation before you speak. Thank you.
Thanks very much. My name is Joyce Chen. I'm from APrIGF and I'm a current IGF MAC member. I was listening with a lot of interest for this topic, and especially, when we're talking about the Global Digital Compact, and that the outcome of that is obviously going into the Summit of the Future. And in fact, just for everybody to know, the modalities for the Summit of the Future is out online. You can actually search for it and read it about how it's being planned. And so I wanted to read the theme that apparently is for the Summit of the Future, which is, sorry, the text is very small. Summit of the Future, Multilateral Solutions for a Better Tomorrow. And I think we heard from Anju, many people aren't really a fan, specifically of the multilateral model, obviously, but I think both multilateral model and multi-stakeholder models have to coexist. That is the reality. So my question is a very simple one. How do we stop people from being so skeptical? You have to be either on one side, you can't do both, splinter. How do we be more mutually respectful for both models to coexist? How can we support and help each other instead of being divisive? That's my question.
Thank you, Joyce. I think we'll take one more question first, and then we'll go to the panel. Dr. Kenny, please.
Okay, Kenny Huang is your council member of APNIC, just for the record. Thank you for bringing this important topic to the stage. I believe the importance of internet is very critical. It's compared to 50 years ago, it's far from imagination. But so I believe most of the participants in this room probably embrace the multi-stakeholder model and instead of multilateral model. And Joyce just mentioned, we probably try to find a way to harmonize the two different concepts. Probably we can find somewhere in between. My question to this is the majority internet critical functions still performed by so-called internet governance institution. For example, like ITF, they manage the protocol, and I can manage the domain name, top level domain name, and I manage all the IP address resources. And it's very similar to even 5 decades ago, the similar operation model. And we believe this multi-stakeholder model is still performing quite well, but the question will be, is it going to scaling very well in the future? Because the importance of the internet is quite different compared to 5 decades ago. And for example, like as the minister just mentioned, we cannot say goodbye to internet, but unfortunately, some certain region or some certain people, they will probably need to say goodbye to internet because they probably violated some service agreement they agree perform this kind of agreement with internet governance institution. So the importance of that kind of violation could be even more penalized than international court order. So for example, like an internet sanction. So I don't know where to find out the answer, how to harmonize with a multi-stakeholder model, and how can it perform well in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kenny. Maybe we would like to answer the first 2 questions. Anybody would like to take Joyce's question about how to harmonize the 2 models?
I did say that I wasn't a fan, but but I completely agree with you, Joyce. You are absolutely right. Of course, we need the governments to support. We need the countries. We need the regions, particularly. A lot of it is also that we keep saying that we should always be thinking about developing countries, but we should also take into account that developed countries can also help us. We can learn from them. We can understand from their failures, their lessons. And so we can also apply to our region as well. And by our region, I'm talking about the low and middle income countries. But I also feel that at the UN level or at the global level, we need to make sure that we have equal representation for governments, from the civil society, from the communities, marginalized communities who are actually doing the amazing job in their countries. Also the private sector, the public sector, we need to engage them in these conversations. And as you can see, I think in the APrIGF process, there's not many government representations. And I think we need to engage them in these conversations because they are the ones who actually develop policies. They are the ones who actually create these policies for the people. So I think it's both ways. I completely agree, Joyce, with you, but I'm going to leave it to the others to respond to that.
So I think, one of the challenges many nations possibly face is that, okay, let me speak from the perspective of coming from a large nation. Okay. So there are different parts of the government which deal with both multi-stakeholder and the multilateral environment. And not necessarily they actually coordinate amongst themselves. Okay. Because it's just part of how they are structured and therefore what they do. So I think the reality, I would say, is that you can't say it's one or the other. Both will need to coexist, and you find the best way to kind of be consistent in what comes out of both the processes.
Thank you, Samiran. Would you want to take a stab at Dr. Kenny's question about the, sometimes violating terms and conditions might be even more stringent than internet sanctions? Maybe just a few words on that.
Where's Dr. Kenny?
Kenny, maybe
Could you
just.
just repeat that? Thanks.
Okay, sorry, because most of the behavior we follow around the internet community is follow the terms and conditions that regulated by the community, and because that's a bottom-up policy making process. So when community propose a proposal and get consensus, it become a policy. And some of the members, if they unable to fulfill the contractual requirement, they probably will be lose their right, because according to the terms and conditions. But because the critical of internet it is today, and if people they are unable to fulfill that kind of contractual requirement, but still being penalized due to they have violated the contract. So will that be any other help to help them? For example, like if for example like I can control the country code top level domain, if I can perform some internet sanction to terminate the right for some CCTLD operator, and that kind of penalty could be even more severe than international court order. That's it. Thank you.
I'm left with the microphone in my hand, so I'll take a stab. Yeah, but I'll. Okay. All right. Okay. So I think one of the challenges all tech companies face is that there are terms of services that we have, and all of them may not necessarily be harmonized. Okay, so something might work on X platform, may not work on Y platform, and that's the reality, and that's, I would say, part of the evolution, because even culturally, many things which are acceptable in one geography may not be acceptable in another. How do we, beyond a point, how do we actually figure out the nuances? This, I'm sorry, Dr. Kenny, I may not have the best and perfect answer, but it is work in progress, I would imagine, everywhere in the world. I think a lot of the regulations that come up locally in specific markets try to address this issue, but is there a right way out? Possibly not immediately, but this is a good conversation to continue for sure.
I agree. That would be an evolving process, and we keep dialogue based on that kind of issue. Thank you.
Thank you, Samiran, and thank you, Kenny, for your question. Now we're going to actually segue over to remote. I see that there has been a hand up as well as a comment. Maybe if we can read out the online comment first, and then we'll go to the hand, or maybe I can read that out. Okay. There's a comment from, okay.
Sorry, this is an online comment from Ying Chu. About the LEO, the other session is talking about LEO challenges by ISOC. There are some geographic and national security concerns with LEO deployments. For now, it is still an oligopoly market in LEO business.
Thank you, Ying Chu. And we'll go to the remote hand. I believe that might be Sridip. Are you able to speak?
Hello.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead, Sridip.
Thank you, Jen. It is always a pleasure listening to Vint and all the speakers here. And thank you all for giving us this opportunity. And, as Vince rightly said, accountability, transparency, and equality, these are the main values. And we all need to understand that these values are gonna, give us the values for multi-stakeholder engagement, as well as going down, creating in the community. And apart from that, I admire the work that has been done by APrIGF. I'm also the part of APrIGF, and certainly the next billion is coming from Asia and Africa, and we will certainly create that awareness. But at grassroots level, I think there is better engagement that is required at national level, where APrIGF is also working towards it, and we need to further create utilize those resources, and we further have to go hand in hand, bridging those gaps and creating those capacity building and awareness programs so that the unreachable is reachable. And this is the platform. And thank you all for making this possible. And thank you for collaborating. And further, we need to build up that energy, to work with collaborating with other NRIs and other work within the APrIGF as well. So that would be my suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Sridip, for your comment, and thank you, Ying Chu, as well. I note that we have a lot of participation online from different NRIs in our region as well as outside of our region. So I'd like to acknowledge, especially for those joining us remotely. Now we are going to turn back over to the room. Amrita.
Thank you, Amrita Chaudhary, for the record, and I will be wearing my APrIGF hat at this point of time. So my question is connected to what Joyce had raised, Summit of the Future. We understand the aspirations are for a multi-stakeholder discussion and the final discussions being multilateral. We aspire that it is more multilateral even when decisions are taken. There is another point, and I may be reading it incorrectly, is that whoever has to participate in the Summit of the Future needs to be approved by member states. When we are talking about small civil society members, I could also talk about my entity like CCOI. How do we participate in these summits? Who would be legitimizing me? The big civil society organizations perhaps may have a seat in discussing it. But when we want diverse voices from across the globe to come in, would a civil society from, say, Nepal or Bangladesh or India, for that matter, India is huge, but smaller ones too, or even from PNG, be there in the table to share their views? Are we thinking of making the process more open so that we are more inclusive in the inclusive terms and not exclusive, and just get the big ones in the table? Thank you.
Thank you, Amrita. Joyce, is that a follow-up question? Oh, no. Ah, I see.
Yeah. My name is Bhaskar Bhattacharjee. I'm the Vice Chair of the International Society Accessibility Standing Group and representing the people with disabilities here. My question is that, inclusion is always a challenge. Inclusion of persons with disabilities is always a big challenge for the internal governance process. How Global IGF is planning to bring more voices from the disability community? This is the questions we are asking last 1 decade. Again, I am repeating these questions, how we are going to bring more voices from the disability community, and how you are going to respect the UN Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities and UN Disability Inclusion Strategy, which is the UN commitment. How you uphold this commitment? Thank you.
Thank you, Bhaskar. Anja, perhaps if you will allow me, because these two questions talk about inclusion and then, seat at the table, maybe if you would like to answer a little bit.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent question, and it just speaks into favor of the complexity of the whole concept of inclusion in internet governance. I can speak from the perspective of the IGF Secretariat. and I would say even broader from the IGF. But in terms of the IGF Secretariat, there are two things. One is raising awareness, first of all, about these issues. I think there's still a low awareness level in so many areas of the world. And then the second thing relates to creating conditions for people with disabilities to be our equal partners in creating these processes and in participating in the processes. Here's one example when it comes about the conditions. We here in Singapore, our team came back from Japan. As you know, the IGF next year will be hosted in Japan. And the purpose of going there was to understand where the IGF could be hosted. One of the most important factors in the assessment framework of confirming the venue is really accessibility. In order to create conditions that the venue that will be the place of the IGF for 5-6 days is really accessible to everyone, regardless how they will enter, let's say, the venue, or how they will navigate the venue. But when it comes about the substance, it is also about putting these important topics on the agenda of the IGF, where the biggest attention comes of the global community. We are very fortunate to have the Dynamic Coalition on Accessibility and Disability that works really tirelessly on bringing these issues to the attention of everyone. In fact, of the host country agreements, is basically an agreement between the host country and the UN that's signed on the IGF. Accessibility points that were also advised by the DCAD are part of it. And so we're very proud in that sense to strategically include the accessibility points in our overall assessment and hosting of the IGF from a strategic point of view. The accessibility topics are very much present on the IGF agenda, and that's also consciously and strategically done. MEG members, some of them are here also, and they can tell you that accessibility is one of the criteria that the MEG members look when the session proposals come in, and ensure that the program has a reasonable portion of sessions which speak about accessibility topics and overall inclusion topics. So that would be my response from a very concrete point of view of the IGF. But I do understand that it's much more complex, and the more you go into communities where the awareness is on a low level, the more challenging it is, because you have to firstly explain. And finally, I'll just conclude that I'm very glad that the APrIGF sets really a good example of the inclusion of people with accessibility. I saw so many topics on the agenda where the speakers are actually people who have who are directly beneficiaries of these topics and our possible solutions we can create. Thank you.
Thank you, Anja. I'd like to also acknowledge we also have members of DCAD joining us remotely as well. Judith, I can see you, and a lot of other colleagues who are very concerned and interested and allies of this particular subject as well. Perhaps we can go to 2 more questions from the floor. Pio?
Hello, everyone. I'm Pio from Myanmar. As you know, in this world, we are facing so many internet issues and accessibility issues. So, but I don't see any UN agency to do research and to report in this area to see the ground level of the information, reliable and valid information of the internet issue. So I'm wondering how UN is trying to see the ground level internet issue to observe and get the valid information, especially in the country where the internet issue is very challenging and internet accessibility is very challenging at all. Even in this country, the local civil society have been threatened even to do the research on these matters. So my question is there any plan to open the UN agency related to do research and report about the internet related related issues and to report back to the United States and suppress around the world with this report to see the village and to village informations of the ground information, ground levels or situation in this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Pio. We'll take 1 more question and then we'll go to the panelists to answer. Winston, please.
My name is Winston Roberts. I'm from New Zealand, but I'm speaking for the NGO IFLA. My question is addressed to the Minister from PNG. Sir, I noticed that you referred to the role that your country hopes to play in collaboration with other countries in the Pacific. And I remember from the original World Summit on the Information Society that there was, in those debates, a very strong emphasis on integrated regional development programs for various developing regions around the world. And I wonder if you would agree that the development of a strong unified internet in the Pacific is also a strong element, a desirable element for integrated economic development in the Pacific now.
Thank you very much for that question. As a way going forward, that is the approach that we need to be taking at this stage. I think there were some organizations that were established some years ago. I was just briefed yesterday by our Pacific team, and we are now working hard and looking to putting together something in place so that we all can have that one voice, and of course move into that direction. It is so important for us in the Pacific. Of course, the Pacific is prone to a lot of disasters, and of course there's a lot going around in the Pacific. We were being hit by climate change and all those natural phenomena, and so we are a very, very I would say vulnerable island of countries, and we need to be together in what we are doing. And so as the minister responsible for ICT in my country, I am keen on talking to my fellow ICT ministers in the island nations to come together. I've already, before coming here, I've already planned, I've instructed my department to start working on a ICT ministers forum or a conference of some sort to be held in Port Moresby. And so, yes, I'm very keen on taking this challenge going forward, and of course, helping our brothers and sisters in the Pacific Islands to do something that is more worthwhile as far as internet is concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister, for your response. And yes, perhaps any of the panelists wants to answer the question from Pio, which also ties into, some civil society groups also feeling like they may not have a chance to be at the table or be able to participate in this process. Perhaps Anju, you might want to start with a response, or maybe Anja.
Maybe I can say quickly, I think, Pio, thank you. Those are very important questions and relates to what Andrew said at the beginning. You need to tell us, and repeat it several times. The question is, whom do you tell? The IGF processes at least are open to everyone. And if you have a meaningful connection to the internet, you have a channel to make your say. Concretely, because I know coming from Myanmar, for example, was for such a long time a very completely unrepresented country in terms of stakeholder participation at the IGF. You, for example, and colleagues that are present now together with the youth IGF in Myanmar made a huge change. And I hope that now that with your presence here, we can learn more about the topics that you find a priority in your country, in your region, and globally.
Thank you, Anja, for that. Anju?
I just want to say a quick one. So the A4AI worked with Myanmar responsible business, and also the government. We worked on meaningful connectivity, access, digital inclusion. And during that time, we used a multi-stakeholder approach. We had the government support. And it's just sad to say that we are not able to engage with the government anymore. We're not able to engage with the communities, but we still engage with the civil society. We still engage with the private sector, but keeping in mind that we also need to tread carefully, because we also fear for them, their safety. I will be honest to say that one of our colleagues was arrested recently. So not colleague from the A4AI, but someone we worked in Myanmar. And we feel helpless because we worked with these people. How do you actually engage with them, and how do you actually bring them to that UN human rights actually, at that level? Because it's not just about the global IGF, but at the UN human rights, what is it, the resolution, the security table. How do you find all these issues at that level, at the UNGA level, because that's where the real decisions are being made and how they are actually helping these countries. I get a bit emotional about this because I feel like sometimes we are all helpless, but we try our best to do what we can to engage. And my sincere sympathies and condolences that some of us are not able to support countries like Afghanistan, countries like Myanmar, Sri Lanka. There are other countries that are really affected by all these differences and political issues and also the disasters, etc. But what matters is that you need to think about how you bring these community voices and bring these voices to that level. Get people engaged at that level. It's up to you, it's not up to me. I can't emphasize this anymore, but it's important because it's not just about that. Internet sanctions, right? Economic sanctions, those things all are very much related to what we are doing in this discussion. And sometimes it's hard for us to discuss these issues because it's about, trying to mediate between the country and also the community. But I also feel that it's about you, because these people exist because of you. The UN UNGA exists because of you. They are the government representatives, but they are doing it for you. So you make it a point that your priorities, your issues are raised at that level.
Thank you, Anja.
But we can talk after this. Yeah.
I note that there is a line there, and thank you for patiently waiting. But I do see one of our panelists has her hand raised. Ellen, did you want to respond to one of the questions?
I did, and I'm kind of flowing on from Joyce's question earlier, but Pio, the question about the role of research, I think it is all related, and acknowledging, Anju, that there is, a lot of feeling around this, the importance of it for people and the frustration that people have. And I guess to just share that I think, what Joyce said about being respectful, I think that we can get caught in, ideologies or picking teams around multi-stakeholderism, multilateralism. And I think, I would agree that that's not productive, that this is about people. It's about having, the right decisions, the right things for, the internet. And that involves us thinking about what is the information we need, and that's where the role of researchers is so important. Who are the people and the organizations that need to be in the space? And I do think that there's a great deal of frustration of how we do that. And it varies, in different national contexts. We're talking about where that can be very challenging, but also on topics of great importance and great emotion. And kind of mentioning the Christchurch call, which New Zealand and France brought together, a multi-stakeholder dialogue core of commitments, and Twitter is a part of that, around terrorist and violent extremist content online. And the importance, just reflect on, as we think about the UN system and about the future of internet governance in those spaces, what are the ingredients that you need to get progress on very important things that are about people's lives, and that's an example. And that it is about, getting the right people together, having the right information, being able to, I think, in that tension of multilateral versus multi-stakeholderism, it's also come up around the ITU plenipotentiary that starts soon, that it isn't about a war of these two ideologies, but about making the right decisions through having, the right inclusions. I think the phrase we use is stakeholders as appropriate, but, there's a lot in that phrase that you need to understand what's going on. You need to understand who can take action, what actions they can take. And then it's going to be all those different parts sharing the perspectives they have on it to understand the actions that can be taken and to take action in concerted ways. And that's the foundation that we really need to be collaborating on, and of the people here and working on internet policy and governance issues. We are all charged individually with thinking about how we can improve, every space we're in to make sure it is well informed that the people that should be around the table are. Thanks.
Thank you.
Who've asked this question, that this really gives you hope and also, kind of the fire to take this action further. We'll go back to the floor now. Thank you, Chris, for very patiently waiting, coming to us from a different region as well, even though you're originally from our home region. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thanks. Yeah, Chris Buckridge from RIPE NCC. I guess I'm also a MAG member and also quite involved in EuroDig, which is the European Regional Internet Governance Forum. I think one of the comments that Vint made early on about development of the internet being an engineering problem and just making it work resonated quite a lot for me, because I think there are a lot of parallels to multi-stakeholder approaches. I think at the moment we're experimenting, we're trying things, we're trying to make it work. And the point there that's important is that it's not, multi-stakeholder is not some idealistic sort of approach or idea about how we should do this. It's actually fundamental to how you make a global network of networks work. You can't do it in a traditional nation state governing top-down way. You actually need a global means of coordination that we're still working out how to do. Now, I think one of the real dangers around that multi-stakeholder approach idea is that we work on it in Internet Governance Forum, we work on it in NRIs like APrIGF, and then it doesn't go anywhere else. And I think we're starting to see a lot of these arguments about the Global Digital Compact and the Summit of the Future. We see it regularly around the OEWG, that open-ended working group in the UN, around the ad hoc committee on cybercrime convention. There is this UN commitment to multi-stakeholderism, but it doesn't always translate through, and we don't necessarily know, I haven't worked out how to make it translate through. So we need to keep that pressure on and keep being creative in how we can do that. Because a multi-stakeholder approach actually is really difficult. It's really hard to make it work. Now, I think 2 points I want to make about that and what's really fundamental to making it work. One is engagement. You need to have the stakeholders present for a multi-stakeholder approach to work. And particularly coming out of the COVID era, particularly, working out how these processes work in a hybrid approach, there is a risk there that we lose a lot of people. We lose that sort of multi-stakeholder participation so necessary. So we need to keep working on that, and the discussion around accessibility and inclusion is really key to that. But the elephant in the room as well, and underlying that inclusion and accessibility, is the funding for all of this. We need to have the funding coming in as well. And I appreciated Mr. Gupta's comments from Twitter's perspective of, the IGF discussions are really important. We need to see that sort of translate. And I certainly don't mean to pick on Twitter here. The funding that's coming from the private sector right now to the UN is historically low. We're seeing not a lot, but we're seeing money come from government. We're seeing money come from the not-for-profit tech community sector, not so much from the private sector. And we need to do what we can to really make sure that comes in, because none of this works without the money to actually bring people in to innovate and try new approaches here. So I hope we can work together on that and making that come together.
Thank you, Chris. I think your reminder is extremely important. Inclusion, accessibility, it's all great when we talk about it, but we really need to get to the bottom of it. We fund the people who need to be at the table. Sarai, please.
Thank you very much. I'm Sarai Tewita from Samoa, representing National University of Samoa, and one of the civil societies is Samoa IT Association. Thank you again, Honorable Timothy, for supporting the voice of ICT. You're going to push it through to all our government in the Pacific. We'll find you in doing that, so that we bring Pacific IGF to the Pacific. I just want to make a comment for this morning, our conversation, panel discussion. I want to ensure that more voices, more Pacific voices in the UN digital platform, or UN digital high-level cooperation, because there are lots of work that UN given out to us in Pacific, to the world, and they set standards for us, they set conditions for us, they set all those, but we are in the community that we provide that services. But when it comes to discussion like this, you know, it's hardly have it's a little or nothing, zero at all to consider it. But it would be nice to have that consideration, so that with engagement, a lot of collaborations will be there, because those are the doers. We talk about the issues, we talk about everything, but the doers should, you know, those are the ones that should be considered. And I
APrIGF and absolute supporters and part of the multi-stakeholder modelling and community group that gets this thing rolling. We actually don't belong to this region. We don't belong to APAC when it comes to the actual IGF because of the UN ways they line up regions. So we're kind of influencers here. Nevertheless, I'm going to give you a little bit of sharing for how our national initiative, right, which has gone back for a very long time, had a little hiatus and is now rebirthed for the last 5 years, has taken the time and the energy, and it is work and it does take commitment to build the trust between the stakeholders of a genuine multi-stakeholder modelling, at least at the organising level. So we do have private sector, we do have government, we do have civil society, we do have the tech groups, right? We are not just there in sessions, we're not just there as attendees, we meet monthly, in some cases we meet every Friday for a stand-up meeting all year round, and that builds trust. So then when a not multi-stakeholder, but bilateral happens, let alone multilateral happens, there's a degree of trust and understanding. And it works beyond just it works well beyond even the Internet Governance Forum space, because we now find that they call upon the same group of people we have access to through our NRI to feed in information, grassroots information to the decision makers and indeed the arguers who go to the other forums and try and fight the good fight on our behalf, so that they can consider the diverse voices, not just as unilateral line, because we are diverse voices. So our NRI net thing is all about, and I'm back, is all about gathering the Australian voice. And that's something I think every national NRI can do. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sorry for the Zoom participants. We do have some technical issues in the room. So is it?
Will this work? Perfect.
Yeah, now we have no sound.
Yeah, totally gone now, huh?
All this rich discussion that we've heard.
Apologies to the
Thank you very
online
much.
participants who are experiencing electricity.
This is a very important intervention for us. And as we gather among like-minded people from all over the world, it also gives us the urge and the strength to progress forward. And that what we are doing is not a lost cause, but it is, of course, something that will take us to the next level. And I want to thank the organizers for inviting me to be in the panel again this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Andrew, a couple of words for the end.
I think I'm running out of, so my final words would be to the community, get involved in the global IGF process at the UN digital cooperation level, at the and get to learn about the, what was it, the global digital, and also find a way to get your voices heard at that level and work with the governments, but also with your sector and also with your community. So having a more like a community, meaningful engagements at that country level before you actually take it to the top level. So I'll leave it to you. It's not up to me. It's not up to us. I'm going to leave it to the community to decide what they want to do in terms of high-level decision-making process.
Thank you.
Over
Thank
to
you very much, Andrew. Saveran, your last words for this panel.
Thank you. I think we've heard a variety of voices and a range of topics. I just like to say that, at the United Nations, there's so much work actually going on. I mean, apart from the IGF, there's the work on WSIS, and there's the UNESCO AI ethics work. I don't believe we get to see enough coordinated efforts visible, that people can actually engage with enough. So it goes back to a little bit what Amrita also mentioned. How does civil society participate? I think at the end of the day, with all that work going on, it'll be great to see that impact in more countries in a meaningful manner. So, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if we will be able to hear from Ellen, just a few concluding words from her. Let's try.
I can try. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I would just plus one
We
to
can hear
Anju about getting involved and thinking about involving other people in the spaces that those of us who are here are involved in. And I think it would be a call for persistence to, we think, oh, WSIS, it's been a long time. But I think, we're in the early days of the internet, actually. It's only been a couple of decades, and that we should all take that spirit of collaboration and working together, and add in persistence to keep working for the future of the internet. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ellen. And once again, thank you everyone for really insightful inputs. And you gave a really long to-do list, I think, to all of us to think about and bring in more coordinated action into our ecosystem. Jennifer, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here at the APrIGF. Thank you for hosting us. And I hope that we will come back then next year at the APrIGF, and hope to see you at the IGF in Ethiopia, 28th of November until 2nd of December this year. And obviously you, or all of us together, have a lot to do for the IGF next year when it's coming to your region, finally to Japan. Thank you very much. Have a good lunch.